Well, greetings to you all in South Africa, and it really is my pleasure to join you today for our coffee morning chats and talk about the current health challenges that we face in the current coronavirus climate. And I'm just going to say I've got a cup of coffee and greetings. I'll have a sip now. So today I hope in my little presentation I can solidify some key understandings of the relevant type of immune support that we need right now and what we can do to bolster our current health status. And the focus today is to really understand very scientifically, if you like, the immune challenges that we do face in this COVID era and how we can bolster the immune system with some of our products to our benefit. And in that regard, I will be highlighting the role of two particular new image health products that are particularly aligned with increasing our antiviral protection strategies. And these are our famous Immufort and also perhaps the less well-known King C vitamin C product. I see these as very much two collaborative products, and I'm going to talk about their relevance later on in this presentation. So, even with the vaccine, we still live in the face of an uncontrolled spread of coronavirus, as you all know. And there really is a need to make sure we have the best immune protection in our hands in the first place. And I've made an illustration that you'll all get to see that points to the susceptible routes of infection. So there's actually 2 points of infection. I think we're all familiar with the infection of the respiratory tract. So that's taking the virus into our respiratory system through breathing, water droplets, etc. But coronavirus does not just infect through the mouth and the sinus. It also infects through the gastrointestinal tract. And this actually can happen through contaminated water, feces spread, people not washing their hands, etc. But it's really important to recognize that this virus is very promiscuous. And so we need to have our guard up, that's for sure. And what I'm talking about is reinforcing not only our respiratory and oral cavity barriers, but also our gastrointestinal barriers. What we're wanting to talk about really is bolstering those mucosal barrier defenses. So, how do we do that? Well, antibodies are the immediate protection at these mucosal barriers, and to emphasize, this is not only our lung, our mouth, our sinuses, but also our gastrointestinal tract, but also our gut. And at all of these mucosal surfaces, common to them all are antibodies. They sit and stick to the surface. So we do make, in our own immune biology, we make antibodies at our mucosal surfaces. But in the face of these pathogenic, rapidly evolving viruses, there's a great argument to say we have insufficiencies. So this is a reason we can consider bolstering our mucosal barrier function by consuming colostrum antibodies. So this leads me into Immufort. We know that in Immufort we have colostrum antibodies, and recently I've demonstrated that the natural reactivity of these colostrum antibodies is cross-reactive with the coronavirus family. So immediately we have a solution to bolster our mucosal antibody defenses simply by taking our Immufort tablet. Whether you swallow it typically, I would advise holding the tablet in the mouth and letting it dissolve gradually. And that actually delivers 0.2 grams of immunoglobulin into the oral compartment, which I can say as a scientist is a lot of antibody. And this can be repeated many times a day. And as I mentioned, our laboratory research has shown that these antibodies in our current Immufort do indeed react with several strains and evolutions of the human coronavirus family. And in layman's terms, what we're looking at are the polyclonal antibody specificities in our product. What this means is, because we have grass-fed cows, the colostrum antibody results, or is a result, of the cows being continuously exposed to natural environmental pathogens, and one of which actually is coronavirus. So cows also are exposed to coronavirus B family, which is the family that currently is infecting human. But in the cow life, it's clinically silent. So there's no pathogenicity. It's simply there in their environment. So we're really honing in on exploiting this natural cross-reactivity. And by delivering antibodies to our oral compartment via Immufort, this actually provides a mechanism to enhance the coating of all our mucosal surfaces. So that's our upper mouth and respiratory tract, and also gastrointestinal tract, with antibodies that actually do have reactivity with coronavirus strains. So what we're really talking about is how can we support our mucosal defenses. So I've mentioned antibodies. That's what I call a structure-function relationship. They can bind a virus, they can stick on our mucosa, and it's like a Y-shaped sitting like this, ready. So you imagine my hands are capture sites for a pathogen, being the coronavirus, because that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so these antibodies can grab it. But what else can we do? So this is where I'd like to bring in our vitamin C product. And our King C being a high dose of vitamin C in a beneficial formulation, so taken with ease, functions completely different to antibodies, but does support our mucosal defenses. So vitamin C targets oxidative stress. So that might be a foreign word, the oxidative bit, not the stress bit, because we all have stresses in our lives. But oxidative stress is a huge handbrake on many of our immune defenses, which leads into organ and tissue cellular health. So that's what we're really talking about here. So there's two main drivers of oxidative stress. We're probably very familiar in our lives with environmental factors such as pollution, as much as synthetic food substances used in processed food. So when we're eating food, actually we're not eating food, we're eating fake food. But actually in the fake food are also drivers of oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the key driver of inflammation. And it's also associated with pre-existing chronic conditions such as arthritis, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, cancer, and it goes on. Inflammation is a killer. And inflammation is also induced upon viral infection, and I'll touch on this again in a short while. It's highly pathogenic. So our high-dose vitamin C, a la King C, is a formulation that has enough vitamin C in it that can quench the free radicals, which are the damaging products of the oxidative stress. So when we talk about oxidative stress, we're really talking about chemical products of reactions, and these really get to damage all of our cells. And if you damage a cell, then you've damaged a tissue, then you've damaged an organ, and then you've damaged the body. And importantly, oxidative stress is an immune suppressant. Not only does it suppress, but also it deviates the immune system well away from its balanced functions, which aim to promote homeostasis. So homeostasis is our steady state. In chemistry, we call it the redox state. So our body systems are geared to tone down stress and bolster up repair. So if you have too much stress in the body, too much oxidative stress, then repair systems are inefficient. And also we're less able to defend ourselves, literally, less able to defend ourselves. And actually it's really interesting in this current climate regarding vitamin C. So now there's many studies using high dose vitamin C in a wide range of pre-existing conditions. And these are, in fact, clinical inflammatory conditions as well as cancer, and also trying to use vitamin C to offset the negative impact from cancer therapies, which typically are chemotherapeutic or radiation treatments. But what we've learned in medicine is that high dose vitamin C really can offset and reduce some of the negative impacts of oxidative stress on the immune system. Basically, the take-home message is everyone can benefit from vitamin C supplementation. Just like to point out a couple of points about vitamin C when we're taking it. It's water-soluble vitamin, so it does have a relatively short half-life in the body system. So taking it more than once a day is likely to be highly advantageous. I'd also like to highlight, out of all the antioxidants, our dietary antioxidants, so vitamin C is probably the most powerful one of them all. And I'll touch on them again later, but typically vitamin C works with vitamin A and vitamin D, but vitamin C is indeed the king C. I'd also like to point out that we must not overlook nutritious eating. So I'm talking about taking a vitamin C supplement, but also mentioning dietary vitamin A and D. So we must not overlook how important it is that whilst we take our immune supplements, such as the ones I'm mentioning, that we continue to make sure we eat nutritious food. And if that's hard to do, then taking a supplement such as the Lifeline, Alpha Lipid Lifeline, would be advantageous, because Alpha Lipid Lifeline is formulated to deliver a significant amount of essential vitamins such as D and E, as well as other very important trace minerals. So everything typically works best together, and that's not hard to imagine, is it? So I've been talking about how to survive in the coronavirus environment, and I guess I've been speaking from the perspective of we are well and we want to stay well. But what about those unfortunate ones who've already contracted coronavirus? Well, for these people it's a much more complex clinical picture, and I do understand in South Africa there are a huge number of people that are already survivors of coronavirus. So for those people that have already experienced coronavirus, I've illustrated on the right-hand side of my graphic the collateral damage, if you like, that the virus impact has had. So not only are these people dealing with having had a virus, they also are typically cited, so this is in the medical literature, to have lots of long-term negative impacts. And these are mediated by oxidative stress and lack of repair. So the virus destroys cells, and therefore it destroys tissues and compromises tissue function. So we're back to the lung again, but it's an important point to note. So to recover lung function, if one's been exposed to coronavirus, we're not only now looking at stopping ongoing infection, but we want that tissue to repair. As I mentioned, coronavirus, being a virus, induces a very potent inflammatory response. So it's really important to be able to ameliorate the inflammatory response, and by doing so, that allows the body's repair processes to take effect. And the point about that is, if you've got loads of inflammation, how on earth can the body repair itself? It's an oxymoron. They're opposed functions. So we need to be able to put a handbrake on this devastating disease and allow the body to go into a window of opportunity where it can recover at the cellular level. And also I wish to point out that a lot of coronavirus sufferers don't suffer from the virus itself, but suffer from the opportunistic infections that are able to take hold because the immune system is so subdued. And actually, reading clinical reports, a lot of coronavirus sufferers are the morbidity factor, as we call it, so what's making them sick chronically is a secondary infection such as pneumonia. So it's not just all coronavirus. Once again, colostrum, and we've got the data that shows this, colostrum being a fraction that contains polyclonal antibodies to lots of other environmental pathogens, also is able to provide that defense to all of these airborne opportunistic infections that are around us all the time. And in health we don't succumb to them, but in disease we may, and pneumonia and fungal infections are at least two of those. So we know that Immufort and the antibodies it contains can also bolster that defense against secondary opportunistic infections. One of the other criteria, if you like, of a systemic coronavirus infection that I've briefly alluded to earlier is the inflammatory response, which we also call clinically a cytokine storm. And this isn't actually specific to coronavirus. It's associated with many viruses, including human immunodeficiency virus, even influenza. But the cytokine storm is that body's inflammatory response to that first insult from the virus. So the body goes into defense mode and makes all of these anti-inflammatory mediators, which in part may or can destroy a virus-infected cell. But there's always the collateral damage. So that's really where we're going here, the collateral damage. How can we mitigate the collateral damage from a virus infection? The collateral damage that we experience goes back actually to the oxidative stress that I mentioned earlier in the context of the vitamin C. So these inflammatory cytokines generate a huge amount of oxidative stress, and naturally if the body's busy under oxidative stress, that naturally depresses the ability of the immune system to eliminate the virus, but it also eliminates or reduces the ability of the immune system to be able to organize and orchestrate all the repair pathways that are needed to mitigate the damage that that initial virus infection caused to the cells. And let's not forget, the cells make up our tissues, and our tissues make up our body. So we need to think cellular here. It's really important to understand that. And this cytokine storm is really much more severe than first imagined. So we're really finding out now through peer-reviewed articles published from case studies in high quality scientific journals such as The Lancet and Nature Medicine. So we're finding out a bit more now about the coronavirus convalescent period. And this convalescence really is about the body systems trying to repair, or in some cases they're actually struggling to repair. And it's well reported in medical literature now. This group of patients, they're actually called long haulers because they're suffering for so many months after they contracted the virus and so many months after they cleared the virus from their system. And there's a huge array of very seemingly unrelated symptoms, such as massive crippling fatigue and brain fog, so really unclear or slow thinking. These are by far the most common, but lots of other recovering patients have reported breathlessness, irregular heartbeats, that might be like a heart palpitation, just general chest pain, body aches, almost a bit like way back in the time when we had the syndrome called chronic fatigue and we didn't understand in medicine what was causing it. But it's a bit like chronic fatigue syndrome. But really, I wish to highlight on the brain fog because I come from neuroimmunology actually, and brain fog is a classic symptom of brain inflammation from other inflammatory diseases that are unrelated to coronavirus, but the symptom is the same. And it's increasingly understood that this coronavirus inflammation really does get into our body system, and because the blood and all its inflammatory mediators can get into the brain, it's actually quite easy to understand how coronavirus can cause brain fog or disturbances in the brain. So we really need to think about our whole body here. Whilst we see it as a respiratory disease, that's the point of infection, but its impact is a whole body impact. So in those individuals that already experience coronavirus, it's even more important to think about the oxidative stress, as I highlighted earlier. And again, to emphasize, this is where a high dose of our vitamin C product may well be highly beneficial. And as a product, if one's healthy, one might take 1 or 2 a day, but under conditions of stress such as this, there's absolutely no harm in taking multiple King C tablets during your waking hours, during your whole day. So after all of that, I'd like to recap and hopefully solidify my thoughts and words into some key take-home messages. So what are we looking at when we're talking about using our immune system to support and enhance our antiviral protection? In other words, what are we doing and what can we do to harness the power of our immune system to block entry of the virus and or reduce its pathogenicity and or support the recovery convalescent period? These are our go-to questions, and we believe we have the answers with the Immufort and the King C. So I've made a couple of other infographics to talk to or place the product around. So in this one, you'll see a very elegant illustration I made of the role for Immufort colostrum antibodies in the protection of our mucosal surfaces. And as I emphasized earlier, it's not the obvious respiratory tract, which is our lung accessed by our mouth and our sinus. So when we talk about lung protection, really we're talking about oral defense and also the upper airways in our nose. We're also talking about the gastrointestinal tract. So simply by consuming Immufort product, there really is a real-time delivery of 200 milligrams or 0.2 grams of polyclonal immunoglobulins, not only shown in-house to be reactive with the coronavirus strain, but lots of other environmental pathogens out there that may take hold of you when you're not well. And by holding that in the mouth, that these antibodies naturally stick to our mucosal surface. So the mucosal surface lines all of our membranes, and they literally stick there. It's a bit like a Velcro mechanism, for want of a better phrase. And so by consuming the Immufort, you can imagine decorating all your surfaces with these antibodies that literally are waving around and have reactivities with these noxious weeds. That's what I'm going to call them. They're noxious weeds. So on the next slide that you're also going to see, I tried to position our two Sentinel products, which I believe are well positioned to sit in our handbag for our antiviral immunity. So bringing together and understanding how the King C can support the primary function of the Immufort antibody defenses. So just to recap once more why these products are advantageous. So the Immufort, this is about reinforcing our mucosal tissues with preformed antibodies with multiple specificities against all of the environmental pathogens we face in our current world in 2021, but most importantly, coronavirus. But also bringing in the chaperone, that's what I'm calling it, the Immufort chaperone. So by bringing in the King C chaperone in combination with the Immufort passive immunotherapy, we really do have the opportunity to reduce the oxidative stress on our body systems. And that's really important because that really creates the best and most favorable environment for the most healthy cellular function. So stop the virus getting in, but at the same time boost that cellular defense against letting the virus getting in. And for those that are older, with age, all of our immune systems dial down a bit. That's a fact of aging, even healthy aging. Our immune systems do decrease. The magnitude of the immune defense or the quality of the immune defense. And this is why it's really important to recognize there are products that we can take that can fill those gaps, fill those nutritional gaps. And I'm really happy for anyone to contact me for more questions. And if I wasn't clear, let me know and I'll try and clarify any unclear points. And I hope that this was informative. Oh, cheers.